is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals in Darien.
This is the Darien Sewer Commission regular meeting agenda for December 2nd, 2025.
Planning and Zoning special meeting here in Town Hall, room 206.
Okay, TV, so now let's start again. I will call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order for Monday, December 15th, 2025. It is 7:04 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Kick things off with my report. A couple of things. On Thursday, December 4th, I had a chance to get a tour along with some other folks, actually just State Senator C.C. Marr, of the Walk Bridge construction project in Norwalk. So this bridge, if you don't know, it's a Metro North bridge, and it's set up where it's on a pedestal or a swivel. And it turns like this to let boats go through, and then it turns back. And that bridge is at end of life, so they're replacing it. It's a $1.6 billion project. And what's interesting is they're taking out that pedestal, and it's going to be a raised bridge that works like this, where if they have boats that go through, the bridge section just goes up, boats go through, and then it goes back down. I bring this up because this is a pretty extensive project, and because of some of that work, that's what's been causing some of the delays with the Darien train station project. Because depending on work schedules there, it can affect work downstream at the Darien station. One of the most interesting things was their comments there about the engineering that was put in place when the bridge was built during the Cleveland administration in the late 19th century, and the fact that it has lasted as long as it has. And it's pretty interesting to see what they were able to build at that time, but see it up close like that. Anyway, it's overseen by the Department of Transportation. They've got about 60 employees on site at any one time, and it looks like it's on time and hopefully going to be on budget. But they are highly motivated, and we'll get that done as soon as possible. But that's an update. Pretty interesting to see that. I was going to point out a couple of things just from my newsletter on Friday that I sent out. If you have a chance to take a look, right at the start of the newsletter, there is a blurb about Darien TV. They are conducting a viewer survey. There's a link in there. It just takes a minute if you have some time. Click on that. They are trying to get a sense of their viewers and viewership desires, so that survey is pretty important. If you have a minute to fill that out, that would be great. Monica, I think you're going to talk about this, but just briefly, as I mentioned in my newsletter, the Peartree Point Beach Project is getting underway, and that, as I mentioned before, entails 3 work streams. One of them is to level and partially raise the parking lot to improve flood resilience. A second is to do some dredging around the boat club, and the third is to fix and readjust the boat ramp that folks use there. And as a result of that work starting now, and Marcy, you're on the building committee for that, they're going to have to shut down parking at the Peartree Point Beach, which a lot of people use for Great Island. That parking is closed now except for about 14 spaces that are reserved and still open, and even those spaces are going to close January 5th. So we don't have a lot of great parking options in town for folks to get to Great Island while that work is being done. Fortunately, it's going to be done during the colder months and while 23A is still under construction, which means the island is closed until 4:30 in any case, and it's dark by then at this time of year, and so basically it means during the week Great Island's closed for all practical purposes. But I won't steal any of your thunder. I'll let you talk a little bit about that, but just please be aware that that's happening, and it's some construction work that we really have to get done. It should be done. It's still on track for May-ish,
yep.
Before Memorial Day, hopefully.
Yep.
Then, just briefly on the swap shop. So we've had a few folks reach out because they've showed up at the swap shop, and the swap shop is closed during operating hours, which, by the way, are The hours are normally from 10 o'clock in the morning till 12:30 in the afternoon, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And sometimes the swap shop will close, and the reason for that is bad weather. So it's either raining really hard or it's extremely cold. And the reason for that is they don't have a lot of shelter over there. They don't have heat and air conditioning. And these are all volunteers, and so we don't want those folks to get in a bad way because they're having to deal with poor weather. So sometimes the swap shop does have to close. You can follow them on Instagram at Darien Swap Shop, and they will post their closings there. You can also send them an email at swapshop@darienct.gov if you're unsure if the swap shop is open. As I said, though, it is run by volunteers, and they are always looking for new folks. And so if you would like to learn more about the swap shop and maybe consider signing up to volunteer and help them, that's a great town asset and something I think all five of us are very supportive of. And anything we can do to encourage a good supply of volunteers to make sure that operation stays running well would be terrific. So please email me or the Board of Selectmen, or just reach out if you've got questions. Susan Cameron is a good lead person on that, and I've got her email address in my newsletter, so please reach out if you'd like to help the swap shop. That's all I've got for this evening. Any questions from anybody? Let's go to board liaison reports. Mike.
Thank you. The Blight Review Board met on December 10th. We will meet again on January 14th in the new year. We reviewed the 8 properties that are currently on the list. Of the 8, 6 are either in foreclosure or have been recommended for us to review for considering for foreclosure procedures. And there are 2 that are still in the investigatory or just fine stage. And we look to work, well, certainly with all the property owners, but these 2 pending properties to see if there is a way that we can assist them in resolving their blight. More to follow in January.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that you don't homes in this kind of situation. I appreciate the board taking the time to get this right. So looking through, working with these residents and trying to avoid an adverse situation or problem. Sometimes it simply can't be avoided, but the fact that you guys spend so much time to work with those residents, I think I speak for everybody. We do appreciate that, so thank you.
Certainly.
Okay. Marcy.
Sure. Mental Health Task Force has not met since we've last met. I think we meet again in February. We usually meet quarterly, so I'll keep you guys updated on what will be on the agenda for the spring for that organization. The Peartree Building Committee met for our second meeting on December 3rd. Seems like everything is underway over there. They have started the dredging process at this point. I believe, I have not been down, but I believe they were going to be bringing the bins this week to start pulling up some of the sediment and be bringing that out. We did discuss, how that was going to liaison with shutting down the parking lot and what was happening with Great Island. So I'm excited to hear about the possibility of putting a shuttle down. The dredging will be complete by January 31st. That was the goal. So things will be very busy for the next 5 weeks down there, and then they'll start the construction project with the boat ramp, and when the weather gets warmer, they'll start the parking lot. So that's where we're at.
Terrific, thank you.
If I could just say before I start on Great Island, just a thank you to J.C. Carter and all of the volunteers that worked on the Wreaths Across America. It was on Saturday. It was a really tremendous showing. If you drive past Grove Cemetery, you'll see them all, and I think it was the biggest turnout and the largest number of wreaths that we've had. So, and if I remember right, January 17th is the day to collect all the wreaths. So if you're not doing anything and you want to get out there, I'm sure they'll appreciate. So as John said, Peartree Beach is where a lot of people park to walk to Great Island. So very, very thankful for the committee and the Park and Rec Department and the contractor to put aside 14 spaces. I think it's important to remember that that is temporary. These are spaces, and it's not, the beach is closed, the parking lot is closed. This is just for 14 cars to park there and then walk off the property and go wherever they want, including Great Island if they want. So on 23A, the contractors will not be there between December 20th, which is Saturday, to January 5th. So during that time, the property is open as if it would be a weekend. And we hope people will stop by and take a walk and enjoy a holiday stroll there.
So just to be clear, the 14 spaces, how long are those open until?
Those are until January 5th.
Okay, so we'd have those spaces while the work's not being done in the
Correct.
Great Island space.
Right. But on January 5th, those parking spaces will go away, and people will have to figure out another way to get there. Maybe Uber or have your friend drop you off. But I'm sure people will be very considerate of the neighbors that live there as far as when they think about parking.
Yeah, and we just don't have good parking alternatives. We thought about this for quite a while. We were not ready for parking on Great Island for a long list of reasons, not the least of which is that the 23A work is not finished, so you can't get up there. And there's just not any other nearby spot that's municipally owned where we can have parking. And I've had a couple of people reach out about this, pointing out that there really should be an alternative, and there just isn't. We just don't own, as a town, property that's near Great Island that could serve in that capacity. The good news is this work on Peartree Point should be finished by Memorial Day. That's what we're hoping, in which case the lot is back open. Everything's ready to go for the summer season. It just means that things are going to be a little inconvenient between now, well, between January 5th, when really all the parking is done, and when that's is finally open on Memorial Day. As Monica says, we encourage people to get rides, use Uber if they'd like to go to Great Island. We're going to talk about a shuttle service in a moment, but we're trying to get some alternatives in place. It's not that we haven't thought about it, there just aren't a lot of great alternatives.
Yeah, but I think it's important to remember this is, these are projects, they have they have an end date. So, and the Peartree project has been on the books, it's been talked about, and we're moving forward on it, and I think it's fantastic. Yes, it's unfortunate that there will be a pause when we have access for parking there, but the project is really worthwhile, and I hope everybody can just have a little patience.
Well, plus the good news, the Peartree Point Beach and Great Island are not the only places you can walk in town.
Yep.
Right? You can go for a walk at Wheat Beach. You can go to Highland Farms. There's a ton of places to walk. It's just not Great Island for a while, or at least not easily. So keep that in mind when you're looking for places to go out and spend a day outside if it's a pretty day. Lots of places to walk in town, and we will solve this parking problem as soon as we can. Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. Sarah?
The only update I have for the Hinley Homes and Royal Building Committee is that there's a meeting on Wednesday night at 6 p.m., our monthly meeting, and that's it. There's no other meetings since our last Board of Selectmen meeting.
Okay. Nice and quiet. All right. Next up is public comments. I don't see anyone here this evening, so I will take that as no in-person public comments this evening. Let's go to new business. Discuss and take action on an appropriation of $27,000 for a Great Island survey. Jennifer.
Excuse me. So we have an RFP out for early access design, or design work for early access. Scaled down parking and what's needed right around that. What we would like to do at this point is a $27,000 appropriation to get the an updated property and topographic survey of Great Island, have Redness and Mead do that. The original was done by aerials. That's what was used for the master plan, but for actual engineering and whatnot, we need verified survey information so that the design and engineering work is accurate. Doing the appropriation now will allow Redness and Mead to get started, which should save about 2 months on the design work that comes out of the RFP. So that will expedite us getting the design work done, which then we'll be able to go out and bid the construction work sooner, and we can aim to get parking out on Great Island a couple months sooner.
Yeah, I mean, a survey, especially one that's done on the ground like this, is really it's an existing conditions report that allows you to kind of understand property elevations and grades and all of that, that makes it possible to design not just the roads and sidewalks, but the drainage and everything else. And it's a good way to minimize surprises when we put this work out to bid. And so it's super important to have that kind of detailed analysis in place for construction. And if we get it done now, it's well in advance of all that, and we'll be ready to support that bid process. So this is one of those must-haves that we really should move forward with now. If we were to delay and just wait to try to do it as part of the RFP that's gone out for this sort of pre-construction bid document work, it's going to add a lot of time to this process. Is that right?
The survey itself is like an 6 to 8 week, but it's not just let's call it 2 months. It also, because of the calendar and the weather, it could push out the whole construction from the end of one year to the beginning of the next year. And the survey doesn't expire. The conditions don't change. So this survey will be applicable for many years.
For any work that's done on that
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So anything we want to do out there, we'll need to do this survey. This way, we can have it started, and so when the design team the construction team is hired, they're good to go. So there's really a lot of reasons to do this now.
Okay, so this really is a surface and topographical study. It's not an environmental study
No,
or anything like that.
No.
Okay. And your recommendation is that we definitely proceed?
Yes, and I was happy to see Redness and me take another look and figure out if there were some things that, because we changed the scope a little bit, if there were some things that could be adjusted, and that was reflected in the new fee.
Okay, less than what
Yes.
I saw there.
Yes, it's 27 instead of 33.
Okay.
Is this just a survey of the space that they're considering doing projects on, or is it the entire island?
No, it's a good part of the island, but it's they chose the area for a variety of reasons, but it doesn't encompass the entire island.
Okay. Areas that we probably
Yes.
could do some
Yes.
improvements
Yes.
on. Okay.
Other questions? Mike?
It seems that, 6 to 8 weeks to do a survey of a limited area of the island is long. Is there a reason why it would take so much time?
Mike, I'm not, an engineer.
I don't know if in your conversations with them,
No.
they expressed why that.
But
timing would be
but
what it
this,
is.
this is a lump sum, so I'm sure that the time is, they're giving an estimate based on what is really required. They're not getting paid by the hour.
Well, I'm certainly in favor of anything that gets parking on that island more
This will
quickly.
help.
So
This will help.
generally.
This will help at least by 2 months, maybe more.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is just looking at a list of things that I've seen in these surveys, there's enough topographical variance on these projects, that, particularly in that particular area, that could add to some of that complexity. But other than that, I don't have a clear answer to that either. Okay. Other questions?
The only other question I have is this going to take into account some of the environmental issues that existed when we purchased the island? Such as the issues with the old cherry orchard?
A lot of that had been, well, it was either remediated or the section that was going to be included in some of the early access work, it's not going to be included now. So at least my understanding. All that's actually been mapped out. We know what it is. It's just a question of
Right.
remediating
Okay.
it. So I believe those issues have already been identified as part of the retail to brand work. Is that
Right. And the orchard isn't part of this survey.
Okay.
That area won't be covered in. We're not, we're not even close to touching that for early access.
Got it.
Other questions? Okay, could I get a motion to approve a special appropriation of $27,000 for updating the property and topographical survey of Great Island and recommending the same to the Board of Finance? Mike moves. Monica seconds. All in favor? Okay, great. Next up, reschedule the December 7th, 2026 Board of Selectmen regular meeting.
Yes, we discovered that that actually conflicts with the state of the town. So we need to move that. Our options, we are meeting December 21st, so we could do Monday, December 15th. Or if you prefer, we can do another day the week of the 7th.
Just not a Monday.
But would
Right.
that get me out of having to stay in town?
No, we need to make sure that you don't get out of that.
No,
That's funny.
just try. Why don't we just do it the following day, the Tuesday?
Okay.
And the only thing is, that's usually the Board of Finance meeting, but
They would probably be the following week because they're usually the third Tuesday.
got it.
So you're recommending the 8th and the 21st for that month?
Or push into the 14th, right? Is the other option.
Yeah, sorry, it'd be the 14th if we went a week out.
I'm sorry, Jen, when is it again? So we're not doing the 7th?
Right, we don't want to do the 7th because of the state of the town.
Got
So
it.
we could do another day that week or the following Monday, which is the 14th. I think I said the 15th.
And BOF meets on
15th.
the 15th?
Yeah.
Yeah. How about the 14th? Does it work?
That's fine.
Sure. So we'll have a double whammy, 14th and 21st? Is that what you're saying?
That's fine.
Okay. Switch that to the 14th. Do we need to have a vote on that?
Yeah.
Could I get a motion to reschedule the December 7th, 2026 Board of Selectmen regular meeting to Monday, December 14th, 2026? Sarah moves. Marcy seconds. All in favor? All right, next up, discuss and take action on a charge for the Advisory Conservation Commission. So, as included in the materials I sent around, I provided a draft. How you doing, Greg? We're done.
Have a good night.
Oh, good. Thanks, Greg. Very good, thank you.
As you recall from our last meeting, we voted to go ahead and authorize an advisory committee on conservation, the purpose of which was to help shape eventually and propose a permanent conservation commission as part of the boards and commission work that I've proposed for next year and that I'll outline in January to the RTM. So what I sent around was a draft mission and mandate for that committee, which you guys have hopefully taken a look at. I know, Monica, you had some edits to this, which I thought were very good. We can go through those in a minute. One thing that I guess I've got a few emails today about our proposal for this conservation committee. And the main thrust of, I think, those emails has been to dispense with this committee and charter a permanent conservation commission right now. I get the need for urgency among some folks and their sense that we should get started right away. I'm also cognizant of the fact that, as they pointed out in several emails, this has been dealt with in the Plan of Conservation and Development, and there's been certainly a lot of thinking about this in other towns, and I totally get all that. My concern here is that even in our own POCD, the Conservation Committee itself is in fact not fully defined. So for example, there's nothing in there about the Commission's legal powers, appointment process, membership size or qualifications, reporting line, or general oversight mechanics. And so even in the POCD, it's not specific about that. I would further say that even the POCD, it recommends that we consider a split of some key functions that are currently within the Environmental Protection Commission. And that just highlights something that I've noticed, which is we have a lot of environmental functions that are lurking in all kinds of committees. They're in the Parks and Rec Committee, which has spent a lot of time on invasives. They're in the Advisory Committee on Coastal Waters, which spends a lot of time on water issues along our coastline. They're in the Environmental Protection Commission. They're in Planning and Zoning. They're even among town staff. And so I think for us to just create a commission like this without taking all that into account to make sure we get this right would be a mistake. I also think that there's learnings from other towns. I would like to hear, for example, what some other folks who've worked with conservation commissions in other towns say they like and don't like about their commissions. And I'd like to have an inventory of those comments. So we love this, but this has not worked well, and for us to tell us that. And then finally, I want to hear from a variety of voices. We're certainly going to hear from the folks who are focused on environmental matters like right now. I think we need to hear from homeowners who have had to redevelop or rebuild houses. I'd like to hear from developers. In other words, I want to hear from everybody who's going to have a stake in the work and focus of this permanent commission going forward. It's important to get all that input so that we end up with something that has a real shared sense from all of the stakeholders as to what's going to work best for Darien. And that is not a snap your fingers and get it done in 5 minutes type exercise. So I appreciate that there's a sense of urgency among members of the community on this. At the same time, I have a quite strongly held point of view that we need to take our time to get this right, and that we should go ahead and do that. So that's the reason for proposing this. Monica, I thought you had some great edits to the proposed mission and mandate. Would you like to take us through those?
Sure. So on, I handed out, Mike, what's in bold were some thoughts I had just for consideration. On map the current landscape, I added identify any intersections with long-range planning efforts, including the town of plan of conservation and development as applicable. And then I said the committee will not assume, duplicate, or replace the responsibilities of existing boards, commissions, or town staff. And I thought under deliverables, a list of residents who have expressed interest in serving on a future conservation commission for consideration by the Board of Selectmen. That wording should be included and changed from the previous, but I don't have a red line, so I can't tell you what was there before. And then I just added all recommendations of the Advisory Conservation Committee are advisory. Any decisions regarding the creation, structure, authorities, or appointments of a Conservation Commission remain with the Board of Selectmen and, where applicable, the representative town meeting. And then I don't know. I think on other advisories we have something about meetings, so I just added the committee is expected to meet at least monthly or more often as needed to fulfill its charge.
I think these are good edits. I'd go back to one that you had here. The committee will not assume, duplicate, or replace the responsibilities of existing boards, commissions, or town staff. That's for this committee, which really is an exploratory committee to see how we're going to set up the Conservation Commission. The permanent commission itself might, in fact, result in a reshuffling of those responsibilities based on what they recommend. So this is just for the one-year committee and not for the commission itself. But depending on how that's designed, it might in fact do some of those things. Sarah?
Couple things. I think we've gotten some suggestions, which I actually think is very useful under the mapping the current landscape would be to index the properties.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but keep in mind, that's something for the committee to figure out and to design into the Conservation Commission. That's not going to be with the work of this committee. This committee's job is to design a Conservation Commission. That's probably one of the charges of the Conservation Commission.
So, I hear you.
But we're not going to do that now.
So, who is we?
Well, if we wanted to work with town staff to try to launch an effort to do a careful inventory of all that, we certainly could do that. That's going to be a separate effort from this committee's work, which is going to be focused on what do we do to create a Conservation Commission.
Okay. Is there a possibility that we could change the timeline from 12 months to 6 to 12 months? And if we're able to get the work done beforehand, that'd be great. And if not, I mean, it's possible maybe that by the end of the fiscal year, at the end of June, maybe we may have an ability to put one together. I don't know. I don't, it, you know.
We certainly could do that by the end of his 12-month mandate or sooner if possible.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
I would think whenever they feel they have a work product that meets the other requested deliverables, they can
Sure.
deliver it. You know, to Monica's point, and John just mentioned, the committee will not assume, duplicate, or replace responsibilities of existing boards. I mean, it doesn't have the authority to do it.
To do any of that.
Any of that anyway. But I would think, and I guess this language wouldn't preclude it, but I would think this committee might want to have members of some of these other boards and commissions or town staff come in and talk to them and advise as to what their roles is. Presumably, these 5 people won't be necessarily completely familiar with the roles of all the related boards and commissions and may need some information on that. So I would hope that they would have the ability to consult with these existing entities concerning their roles that might inform their ultimate recommendations.
I think that's a great point. I'm pretty interested in this topic, so I'm going to sit as an ex officio on the committee, and to the extent they need access to anybody or anything like that comes up, I'm going to make that happen. When we do sit down and appoint the 5 folks to be on this committee, kind of building on your point, we ought to have a variety of people there. I think we need folks from kind of the environmental community. There's a number of organizations that we should tap into for help or support. And then, like I said, town staff ought to be materially involved. I don't know that we would appoint anybody from the town to the committee, but we can tag several who should be ex officio to provide input. I mean, Rick Talinelli's a clear example. EPC and Eric, the guys from Coastal Waters, I mean, all those folks are going to have a say in some of the shaping of this, partly because some of the environmental topics that a commission might cover are sitting on their plate right now.
And one other point, and then I'll yield to Marcy. I think it's also important that somehow we express to this committee, maybe once they're all selected or in the interview process, that I think in government or anywhere, there's always a great feeling to say, well, this is the way that we've always done it. And I think people can be proprietary about what their roles are. So I think it'll be very important for this committee to have the ability to reject or consider that kind of attitude, because we're doing something here that's never been done here. And it's important that these citizens who are on this committee, who hopefully will be great volunteers going on in the future, have the sense that they can actually get something done that will be seriously considered, because if we were just happy with the way things are, we wouldn't be doing this.
I agree completely. That's a great point. Other comments?
So 2 things, just for process, we're going to select 5 people to sit on this.
Yep.
They're going to apply to us. We'll sit down and have a series of interviews and choose those 5 people to come on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to happen in the next month, 2 months.
Yeah, I don't know if we get it over the Christmas holidays. As of this meeting, I'm opening the application process, so if anyone wants to apply, we should do that. The one complication on this is, like any board or commission, we have to have partisan balance. There's rules on that in terms of majority, minority parties. And for the folks who are applying with a party label, Democrat or Republican, we really need to get those applications through the town political committees. And so I'm going to be reaching out to the chairs of both those committees tomorrow to let them know that this process is open and that we'd like folks to apply. If anyone is interested in applying, call the Selectmen's office, or Linda, Karen, or me, and we will get you an application, which we have that apply, whether you're coming from applying because of your party membership or you're unaffiliated. We will take certainly all comers for this. So.
The other question is, I know the state of Connecticut has put a statute together kind of giving advice on how to set up these conservative commissions. I would hope that that state statute is going to be brought to this commission and we're going to use that as a guideline?
For sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I echo that, yes.
I would imagine that having that bit of
140
information
some
will
odd
not really
towns that
reinvent
have a
it.
conservation committee,
Yeah.
so we should be able to follow the statute, yeah.
Yeah. I think that'll be the easy part, is making sure we go through and so look at their rules that govern how this is supposed to work. We obviously want to follow that. The guidelines we'll take under advisement. For me, what I'm really interested in is, say, in 6, 8, 10 towns that we might interview, what did you guys like about how it's working now? What do you not like? And really get a sense from different angles, both the environmental side as well as the development side, because if you think about it, the commission is really meant to adjudicate those 2 opposing forces, right? So if you look at the conservation side, if they had their druthers, it would be all conserving nature. I mean, we'd have very little development in an extreme case. And on the other side, you've got developers who are out trying to develop things, and that entails impacting nature in a pretty severe way. And so this is about trying to reconcile those two. There's other issues like chemicals and pesticides and all that that would be covered as well. But that's the big tension that this commission has to balance. And so having both parties at the table is important for developing this, but it's also important to ping these other towns and say, all right, you put this commission in place, what do you guys think about that, striking that right balance? As I've said, even for the Great Island work that we've done, that Monica led, the most important thing is to get something that works for most people most of the time. We're never going to have a perfect answer for developers. We'll never have a perfect answer for people who are deeply environmentally focused. We're going to get something that balances just right. So again, that's just a reason why I think just putting this commission in place immediately without taking some of those things into account in terms of how we design it, I think would be a mistake.
The other request I have is that if this is a 12-month period of time.
Can be.
It could be 6 months, whatever it would be. If we could have frequent check-ins with whoever chairs this commission at the time so that we don't have them going down a rabbit hole of the wrong direction and in 6 months having to have them pivot. So I don't know how frequently we should probably have them come in and sort of report back if we're going to be the deciding factor on how this is going to be built.
Yeah, the question will be, I mean, I plan to sit in on all the meetings, although I would be happy to abdicate that role if somebody else felt strongly about serving in that capacity. I don't want to take up one of the 5 membership slots with somebody from the Board of Selectmen, but
yeah.
If 1 or 2 of us wanted to sit in on that because it's so important, I think that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think because of that, just like our building committees, we'd have enough substance from having sat in on those meetings that we could update ourselves about what's going on. If we had to bring in the committee chair at some point because there was something that one of us could not comment on, I think we could do that. But I'm very motivated to make sure that this board's kept up to date on that process.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm not quite sure what to do with this mission and mandate. We're going to have a few edits to that. What we could do is just edit this and vote it at the next meeting.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, why don't we do that? So no vote on this tonight, but with Monica's edits and a couple others that have just come up in this conversation, I'll recirculate this and we'll put this up for a vote at the following meeting.
Yes, we could approve that we're doing this and then approve the mission mandate at the next meeting too.
Yeah, we've already approved the formation of the committee.
Okay.
We just haven't approved this mission and mandate, which we'll do at that time.
Okay.
But again, I will get out, and we'll include it in the town newsletter on Friday, just that we'd like to get applications to this committee from a wide range of people. Okay, other questions on that topic? All right, very good. Next up is discuss and take action to create a sidewalk committee. So like the Conservation Committee, I'll wait until the next meeting to bring to you all some materials on that, which is why we didn't have it in the package here. The idea of this committee, I actually have a draft mission and mandate. It's not quite ready to share, but I'll send it out before the next meeting. It's going to be similar to the Conservation Committee, which is its recommendation based. We'd like to get a group of citizens together to help us come up with a list, a prioritized and scored list of potential places where we could either extend existing sidewalks or create brand new sidewalks. We hired this consulting group called BSC Consulting, and there's an engineer who's worked for that firm who has done sidewalk and walkability studies for other towns. He supplied to us a suggested scorecard for sidewalk locations, which I'm kind of filling with right now. But the idea is that you take a set of metrics, so it could be how much traffic there is, or whether this is a thoroughfare, or if it's a state road, or it's topographically difficult, or it requires easement. So there's all kinds of things that you would list out that says these are things that we'd have to deal with if we wanted to put a sidewalk on this spot. And so what we want the committee to do is, based on input from the public, and some committee members will have their own input, we'd like them to come up with a pretty expansive list of sidewalk locations where people might like to have them, and then importantly, use this matrix to score the sidewalk. We're not going to ask them to budget them to say how much it would cost, but we will have a real sense on a continuum of whether it's super desirable and pretty intense public support versus not much, or really easy to put in, say no easements, not on a state road, no traffic signal problems, no power line easements, or really hard to do because it's got all those attributes. So if we put in a sidewalk, it's going to be ghastly expensive because it has all these problems. But they should be able to go in and use this matrix to say, all right, for these 30 sites, we're going to go in and score that, and we'll come up with a scored list of those recommended sites to present to the Board of Selectmen. And this is another committee that I think will take a good part of the year, but maybe not, if they could come to us sooner rather than later with a scored set of recommendations. They would present that to us, and then we would take that and say, all right, as a Board of Selectmen, we need to decide as a policy matter where we want to extend sidewalks. What do we think? And then we take out that list, let's go get a price so we have a sense of what it would cost, and then get our minds around how much additional money do we want to spend sidewalks on, how much do we want to spend on sidewalks in town, and importantly, what sequencing. So start with these, then go to these, then go to these, recognizing that a full execution of a program like that could take several years, not just because of budgets, but because of constrained numbers of firms that actually do this kind of contracting. So that's where we are. I think it's pretty important to put a committee like this in place, lots of public interest, and we'd love to get them started right after the new year. Anybody have any questions or suggestions about how we should go about this?
Well, I do.
Please.
So I'm just thinking about how we've done this in the past, and it's really been under the Department of Public Works. And so now I feel like we're becoming a subset of the Department of Public Works, and I understand the matrix, and I understand that that's how sidewalk decisions have been made in the past. But boy, I would really like the Department of Public Works Director to be part of this whole conversation.
Well, so fortunately, Ed Gentile, our Director of Public Works, has been materially involved in all these conversations.
Okay.
And so it was, in fact, his original, I don't know if he had a scoring card, or what would you call that,
He did.
Jennifer? It's,
Yeah, they had some kind of a scoring matrix.
scoring matrix that fed into the BSC process that resulted in the creation of this. And so Ed's has been and will continue to be materially involved in this. You make a good point, and it's worth emphasizing that a lot of the sidewalk work that you see in town has actually been driven exclusively by Ed and the director of the department and the whole Department of Public Works. I mean, they come to us and we prioritize that. A lot of this work's been done by them to date. Part of the reason for doing this sidewalk committee is that there's been so much public pressure for additional sidewalks, is that to set up that committee where they can reach out to the public more proactively and say, what do you guys want? And then let's have an honest assessment, an honest scoring about how desirable or how difficult this sidewalk is, and to come back and meld that with an existing public works process. I would in fact have Ed as an ex officio to this committee, and he would be actually tied to them throughout their entire work mandate.
Okay.
I don't know if it's possible as a part of this matrix, but I would like to have the consideration of cost. Cost of the materials, cost of the work, cost of legal, cost of buying any easements, or however all of that. I think we need to take that into consideration.
So I would agree with that. Mike, I'll pose this question back to you, which is, at what point do we want to actually get into a costing of each recommendation? So as I thought about that, it'll be hard for the committee to come in and say, we think this sidewalk will cost X. And we could come up with some benchmark cost that says, and Ed has some of these actually, where you could say, all right, a linear foot of sidewalk costs this much.
Right.
An uncontested easement costs this much. A
Right.
contested easement costs this much.
Right.
A traffic signal costs this. So you could come in and say, all right, here's just a list of things on a per foot or per site basis.
Right.
Here are these numbers that we think what they are, and we could throw that in there and says, it kind of looks like this.
But I think a recommendation list should have an associated cost attached to it.
All right,
It
but-
could be that we say, look, it's going to cost $1 million for that road, but that seems to be the most important location. That seems to be the most highly prioritized location. This is what we should do. I think we should not go through this process and come in and then find, oh God, this is going to be $12 million to do these. Like, we can't do this right now. I think we should walk into the process as knowledgeable as possible.
Okay, that's fair.
So, again, matter of process, as we're going to be sitting this committee, who are we looking to apply to be seated on this commission? Is it going to be by neighborhood? Is it going to be by how much they're using? You know, parents that have kids that are walking to school, like who Who are we recommending to be
Oh, we're
interested
gonna
in
seed
joining
it.
this?
One way to do that is to be prescriptive about what specifically we want on that committee. And so we want to say by neighborhood, to your point, we want school parents, we want business owners, we want all of that, and say we want a mix of all those folks. Or we could cast a wide net and say we want as many applicants as possible. Let's look at the applications and say, all right, based on what we're seeing, these people from this area, this particular talent, and based on the applications, to come up with the best mix of people from
Okay.
the people who
That makes sense.
have expressed a willingness to serve. We just pick from that.
Okay.
I don't know that we can beforehand specify all that, and then what happens if we don't get that?
Yeah.
So I'd rather just put out a call, and I'm going to be very aggressive about putting this call out, and I've already had 4 or 5 people say they want to be on this committee. Let's be very aggressive about getting as wide of an applicant pool as possible, and I think we'll have some talented people to pick from, which, by the way, has most of the time been the case for most of the committees that we get involved in. I would just remind everybody, how many applications did we get for the Great Island Advisory Committee, which is a bigger deal than this, I get that, but it was...
It's not. This is important. 44.
There you go, 44. And lots of very qualified people, that some of them could potentially be persuaded that were not on the Great Island Committee, that maybe could be persuaded to serve on this. So tons of talent out there, I think we'll get it right.
And this also has to be balanced by parties?
As do all boards and
Okay.
commissions.
And how many are we
That's a
seating for this?
I would, my ideal membership number for any committee is 7, 5 is the absolute minimum, and 9 is the absolute maximum. I would not go outside that range. I'd pick 7.
And at this point, it's not going to be Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, it's going to be...
I'd rather not do that. I think we need people who are motivated and come from neighborhoods or represent businesses. I think it's a mistake to try to get representation from all these groups, with the possible exception of the RTM. There's a few folks on there that I know personally that are very
Very
motivated
interesting.
by this topic, and I think I will pick one of those guys to be on this. I mean, that would be my recommendation, so. And I know
It's a sorely needed group, and it's a sorely needed exercise in this town, so I think it's incredibly important.
I would say that, based on experience, a 5 is a great number, 7 is okay, 9 is a very large committee, really.
Yes. And hard to get quorum.
Just a lot of work, so.
So maybe we may end up with 5, but let's see. So,
And we'll start taking
and I'll have all
applicants
this written out in terms of stuff we could vote on at the next meeting. So 2 things to consider that I've got in the draft that I'll circulate later. One is, I really think this needs to focus on sidewalks and potentially crosswalks where they make sense, but not bikes and bike paths and lanes and all of that. I think that we can tackle that for another day. I think that complicates the mission of this and becomes too large and unwieldy, so my recommendation would be that they would not address bikes and bike lanes and paths and all of that. So we can discuss that next week, but just let you know that's what I'm recommending. The second thing is that for any crosswalks that might find their way into this, you'll recall that from the pedestrian committee from 2015, they had, I don't know, north of 100 of those things proposed in their work, but none of those had been syndicated with the local traffic authority, with the police department. I also think that's a mistake. So to the extent that they have any recommendations for crosswalks, that those need to have the sign off of the police department and the local traffic authority. In other words, it meets professional standards as to whether you would put one there or not. So we do that. And that'll be in the mission and mandate for that committee.
Okay.
Okay? All right, nothing to vote on now, but I will have all this in good order for our next meeting later this month.
Do you want to vote to create it and then
Oh, I'm
you can
sorry,
chart
right.
it next time?
Let's vote to create a committee. I'll vote for 7 people just because there are a lot of folks on this with the mission mandate and to come at our subsequent meeting. Motion to approve the creation of that committee. Sarah moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor? Okay. Okay, this next item also has no paperwork, but I just want to start the discussion because I mentioned it in the State of the Town address. So this is discuss creation of a Great Island shuttle service. So with the temporary unavailability of parking at Peartree Point and the fact that with what we're proposing in terms of the parking creation on Great Island, it's really going to be, call it first quarter of 2027, that work would be finished and we would be able to open up parking, give or take.
End of '27, more.
December of '27.
I think later in December, yeah, because
2 years.
I think that, well, RFP is due January 15th, so we choose somebody February, somewhere in February. They get started February and March. You got design, you got 30% design, you got 60% design, you got all the permitting. That could take till the end of next year. And then you have to go out to bid. Yeah, it could be.
Okay.
Or, or perhaps not. I mean, I just,
Let's see, so like the Conservation Committee, it would be great if we could figure out how to get some parking on Great Island before the 22nd century. And I don't mean to be flippant, but and I'm mindful of how long these things take. But setting that aside, we're not having parking there tomorrow. And so trying to figure out some way to help folks who are mobility challenged get to Great Island and enjoy Great Island while we're waiting for this parking to be finally constructed and built, I think is very important. I've heard from quite a few residents about this, and those comments are well placed. We really should try to do something. And my sense is that some kind of shuttle service ought to be something we create and try to offer to the public. I do think that it's going to be mainly for folks who have, or for compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, also for folks who maybe are not official ADA, if you will, but are otherwise mobility challenged or constrained, or even just families with very young children that are trying to get to Great Island. That's a problem as well. I have had a discussion with Chris Jones at home in Darien, and he is more than willing to work in shuttles for elderly folks into their schedule with their bus to help get those folks to Great Island. But beyond that, we'd have to create something that's town-run and sponsored to meet the needs of everybody else. And so there's a few things we've got to decide. One is how robust do we want this to be? And by that, I mean frequency. What days does it run? All of that. The second is capacity. How much rider capacity do we need to make available? Are these giant buses, or how do we actually want to do that? And try to create something that can serve us for a while we construct this parking. I'd love to have input from everybody else. I kind of want to write up a draft as to how we might tackle this. I think there's some design work we're going to have to figure out, which is how do we resolve the issue of getting vehicles to do this? What about the professional drivers? How are we going to get all this done? Is there a service that we could do that would make this work? Do we just, I don't know, but I wanted to start to have the discussion to try to get a sense of how we might do this.
So I think it's in idea form, I think it's a good idea. I think in practicality, I think there's a lot of variables, right? And cost, you've got who's going to be driving, what kind of car is going to be used, what kind of insurance, is the town running it, is another organization running it? But also who is going to be taking it, where are they going to be stopping, where people are going to be parking to be picked up, is it several stops, how many times a day, how many times a day during the week, how many times a day during the weekend. I think there's a lot, and I also think we need to have a 2-month launch to see who's using it, how much are they using it, and then do we need to adjust?
Yeah.
right. Yeah, since it's the middle of December, what better time to make a baseball analogy? But they always say, when you're playing on the infield, start with the glove low, because it's easier to come up and have your glove up and get your glove down. So I think as we think about frequency and size, etc., start with something low that would have the least amount of budget impact, and then we can gauge how well that's working or not, and then go from there. I think the idea, of having it be, one central pickup spot in town that has decent parking, as opposed to stops along the way, and then people could get to the one spot and park and hop on the shuttle. I mean, when we took people to Great Island, for these, for the tours, I think that notion worked well. But I think small to start, gauge interest, minimal frequency, so people can plan if you know that it's it's Wednesdays and Sundays from noon to 3, or whatever it is, and people can sort of plan their calendars around that. I mean, they're much smarter people than I am to figure out those kinds of metrics.
Yeah, I have done zero research on this, but for example, you've got school bus companies that are transporting kids during the week. They're not doing that on weekends. I'm wondering if they've got professional drivers and they've got equipment and some of it's ADA accessible. Could you contract with folks like that to say, start small to your point, Saturdays and Sundays only, some limited schedule. Everybody parks in the Road Knights parking lot, which is largely empty on weekends, and you shuttle them to Great Island and you drop them back in Road Knights. Something like that. Maybe we get some third-party help where we don't actually have to create it as a town, but we can use existing third-party resources that are otherwise unoccupied on the weekend was kind of what I was thinking. I mean, to start, unless Jennifer's scowling and
I'm not scowling. I could picture us doing an RFP for someone who provides this service. My initial thought with the bus companies is they have a separate contract with Board of Ed. The vehicles may be bigger than what we want to start with. So I could see maybe an RFP requesting, and even maybe do a survey to find out what our initial timing capacity, what that initial demand may be. Do an RFP that it has to be ADA accessible, run at these times, and then in the contract can say it's reevaluated after some period of time and may,
I think that makes sense. We have to understanding of how much it's going to cost.
That, but it's also seasonal, right? Because when are we thinking of trying to launch this? Are we thinking because Peartree is going to be shut by the end of January, that's when our launch is?
I think 23A is finished by the time we launch this, but maybe it's just, I don't know.
So I gave this a little bit of thought, and so we have construction. If the RFP is approved, the construction should be started in the spring of 2027, right? So we really have, and 23A should be finished May-ish.
This May, 26.
May of 26.
The same time that Peartree Point,
Yeah,
right,
so-
same tree, that the
Yeah.
Peartree Point
So,
parking lot should be done.
so I don't think running a shuttle while we have the road closed is necessary right now, right?
Yeah.
And to Mike's point, not a lot of people are going to be wanting to use the shuttle in the winter anyhow. So we're really looking at like a 6 to 9 month period.
Memorial Day.
And what I don't think the town wants to do is be in the transportation business. And I don't think that we have town staff that is ready and able to do this. And I think an RFP is a great idea, but we're really looking for something for 6 months, 9 months max. So maybe we take a look at Home in Darien. They do have a wheelchair accessible vehicle. Maybe we reach out to them, see if they're interested in doing this, put it in the newsletter, see what the demand is, and stay with mobility challenged or elderly, like older than John, like 75.
So I think these is two different things, though. I think using, the vehicle for At Home in Darien has been purchased with the thought it would be, the usage would be focused on them, and the money, I think, was donated. I think focusing maybe that car usage for the folks that are mobility challenged or elderly, I think makes sense. I think we need to have another option for families or for other people.
But I don't know if, Sarah, like, families have been getting there, right? They've been able to get there, but people that are in wheelchairs or the elderly people.
No, I'm just saying
have
we
a
may
real
need two
problem.
different vendors, so to speak. We may need to have that car from At Home in Darien
Right.
focus on the folks that are either elderly or mobility challenged, but also looking at maybe getting a bus or a shuttle or something to focus on families or whoever else. And I don't necessarily think that it's easy to park either a Peartree or one of the church parking lots and walk a half a mile with kids. So I don't know that people are approaching that. Right now, we can't be driving a shuttle bus onto the road closed at 23A. So I think this is a 2026
So here's
issue.
my concern, being, running the Peartree Point Building Committee here. Let's hypothetically say, Memorial Day, Peartree Point opens up, and now we have this beautiful new boat launch, and we have more beach, and we have beautiful parking. That may increase the capacity in that parking lot come the summer, right? So now, weekends, hypothetically, that parking lot could be packed. How are we going to have Great Island access if that parking lot is getting filled up on Saturdays and Sundays? So certainly, I think a soft launch and really focusing on this disabled community, those who are not able to get there, is certainly true, but I do think that there may be a need over those summer months for additional parking because the Peartree Point parking lot may get at capacity on those monthly. So I would like to almost look and say, all right, let's have this soft launch where At Home Darien could step in and maybe help us out with the elderly. But as Sarah's saying, we may have to think about the overflow in that parking lot come the summer months. How are we going to provide transportation when Great Island will be busy because it is beautiful and people may want to walk down there, and Peartree Point might be busy. So I think we can look at, like I said, seasonally. Off-season, probably don't need that extra, but during the on-season, we might need it. If that beach becomes more popular than it has in the past because of the improvements that we've done on it.
I would add to that and just get to Mike's spot on point, which is let's start gently.
Yeah.
So where we absolutely have to start is that we have to provide ADA access to Great Island,
Yeah.
period. So that's goal number one. We got to figure that out first and foremost. If you are trying to get there and you are disabled, we need to provide access. The second group is the elderly who are mobility challenged that cannot walk there at all. It's one thing to have families that are inconvenienced because it's a long way to walk with kids, but they are young people with kids, and there's a difference between that and someone who is elderly, who maybe is not with a handicap sticker on their car, but simply cannot walk there under any circumstance. I think those are the first two groups that we need to try to accommodate. And I think the At Home Darien guys are in a very good position to help us with that, certainly for the elderly side of that. And then maybe there's an RFP that we could target to a company that does that type of elderly or handicapped transportation to get to folks who are handicapped but who are not elderly, and there are folks like that in town. And let's just start with that. Now, that leaves out a large swath of people, to your point, families, but it gives us a sense of, all right, just how intense is the usage going to be? Just how much is this going to cost? Rather than casting a wide net and getting a ton of people to take advantage of a service like this.
Are we thinking launching in May? I mean, if we can't use the driveway, and how do we drop off folks that are elderly and disabled at the bottom of 23A?
So at the bottom of 23A, if we're launching in May, 23A will be finished by then.
Right, but I'm just saying, we can't really do that until that point.
Right,
Because they won't be able to go near,
right.
Yeah.
to be able to access it.
And I don't think you want At Home in Darien on a road that is,
But that's what I'm saying. So I think
Yeah.
we shouldn't be starting this until
yeah,
it's
but
done.
I think probably reaching out and making sure that there's demand for this, first of all, from
A little informal survey or whatever,
yeah, maybe we do it in the newsletter, we, maybe At Home wants
Figure out
to
how the
reach
residents,
out.
yeah.
You know, I'm just going to disagree with that because the trajectory of the island, so far is that there just haven't ever been great opportunities to get to Great Island. And it's not going to have great opportunities for perhaps maybe another 2 years. I think considering what we've paid for this island, considering what we feel is the level of its asset nature to the town, I think we should take the lead a little bit and create something and then judge it from there. Putting a survey in the field, I think we just commit to doing it. And if we're not doing it until 23A is completed, that makes sense, and it gives us a lot of time to plan and come up with options. But this is either a good idea or it's not. It's either necessary or it's not. And I don't think we need to survey whether or not it's necessary. It's a great asset. And on its face, it takes a half-mile walk to get there, at best. So access is needed. This relates to access. It's needed. Let's do it.
And it's a half mile to the bottom of 23A.
Right, the bottom of it, the bottom of it.
I would add to that, the best survey results we're going to get are from people actually using a service we create. And if we keep it short-term and we find out that people hate it and don't use it, all right, well, we shut it down. Or, oh my God, it's a fraction of the capacity we need. Okay, well, we'll change that. I think some trial and error like that is probably the best thing. The other thing we might consider is, do we need to do something on weekends that get people to the entrance right before 23A between now and Memorial Day? Now, a lot of folks are not going to be able to take advantage of that who are mobility challenged, but we have no other, we can't take them deeper into Great Island until that work is finished. But it would give a chance for folks who just don't have other parking options. There would be a way to get to Great Island on a weekend.
Particularly after Peartree, both of which will be soon.
Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to see a shuttle service run from Memorial Day to Labor Day weekend, just on weekends for everyone.
Well, we could consider.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, I think, to me, that would be the right beginning to kicking off a summer and saying, okay, run some kind of shuttle service starting Memorial Day, going all the way through Labor Day, only on weekends, couple of times a day. I don't know where we would have a central parking location, whether it's Rowan Heights or one of the train stations. But I'd love to see what that cost would be, right?
Let me,
And move from there.
Let me ask this. Would one of you be willing to work with Jennifer to just say for our next meeting, have a scoping out of some criteria that we ought to consider in doing this? So it would be from frequency to capacity to maybe putting out some calls to see what providers exist of something like this. And just have something on paper that we could start to wrestle with and say, all right, here's some design choices. Let's make some choices to have the glove low and get started as of X date. And just see if we could structure something to say, all right, that sounds good. These are all the decisions we would need to make to create an RFP, right, to send out to a provider, because we've made all the choices of what we're looking for, and then based on the output of that meeting, Jennifer can then send it out as part of an RFP to see what providers we could contract with who could help us.
Well, I guess I want to understand, are we interested in starting with the glove low and working with elderly and ADA, or are we looking to have a shuttle service for the entire town? And if we're doing that, is there an end date on that? Remember, when construction starts with the early access project, that's also going to be an impediment to traffic. So there will be just a window here that we're looking at.
Yeah, so great point, and that's one of the things that we just need to put down on paper that says, by the way.
I'm happy to work with you.
Okay.
This process looks like that, and to your point earlier, construction might not start on parking until spring of 2027?
Yeah. No,
Summer.
we should be bidding in 26, December 26, construction, yeah, spring of 27.
Okay.
And it should be like
So-
a 4-month.
So that's 18 months from now. Construction's not coming, 23 aside, but there's no parking or that construction starting for another 18 months. So that's something to know, because, well, we want to structure a shuttle service that goes for this period of time. Because at the end of this period of time, dynamics change and we got to do something else, something like that. But to just lay that out so that these are the decisions we need to make in order to populate an RFP and send that out to see what somebody thinks. The other person who might need to join in is Chris Jones from At Home.
Absolutely.
And just say, all right, here are the assets
What
we
we can
have.
offer. Yep.
Here's what our community
What
looks
we
like.
can
Here's
offer.
what,
Yep.
and he may actually have a sense from the elderly community of what they're saying about Great Island and what their needs are.
Right.
He may actually say, well, until you get 23A finished, none of my elderly riders are going to want to be dropped off at the mouth of the river there, right at the entrance to Great Island, because they can't actually walk up that entrance to get all the way to Great Island. So he may say, not interested in participating until 23 is finished.
Right.
Don't know, but that's my guess. But working with Chris to kind of incorporate his thinking, because we're going to need to do this in parallel with him.
Yeah, I envision a shuttle dropping off internally, not at the gate. Not having, I mean.
Right, so we need to wait till 23.
Yeah, I don't think
Which is the
having
spring.
Right.
people walk from the gate to the circle onto the island, that's a pretty long walk.
Right, although keep in mind, we have 0 parking access for
Exactly.
Great Island between January 5th and Memorial Day. So the question is, for folks who have literally no parking options, and I've had a few emails about that today, should we create something that just takes them to the entrance there, say on weekends? I don't know, but let's put that down for debate.
Okay.
Okay. We've discussed this a lot. Anything else? Okay. All right. Last new business update on the left turn lane of Roanoke Lake Road. So I finally finished a memorandum that outlines some of the parking decisions that need to be made at Jake's, which is the restaurant that's right at the intersection. That will be in all the attorney's hands tomorrow, and that will set in motion a decision process about what we need to do for parking at Jake's. Once we have the decisions from them, we'll be able to both initiate the left turn lane or the turn lane construction work, as well as some other negotiations with the Department of Transportation that we have to finalize all those decisions. So I think this will work just fine, and we'll have more of an update once the parking decisions are made. But we still have the LOTSIP grant in place to support this. That's $1.6 million, I think. Is that right?
Sounds right.
Sounds right. I got that extended with Westcott, which has arranged funding to pay for this, which should cover actually most of the costs associated with this. So more to come, but I'm hopeful that all these decisions will be made, and then we could start with an RFP process that would help us start that construction in the spring. So more to
great.
come on that, but that's good news. I know everybody's frustrated with that traffic on the weekends, which I know I try to avoid myself. Okay, we've got a couple of transfers. First one is discuss and take action on a request to transfer $7,448 from Board of Finance Capital Reserve for a replacement of a dynamic speed sign. Jennifer.
The police department is looking to replace a 15-speed sign that's across from Holmes on Hoyt Street. They looked into repairing it. It's unable to be repaired, so they've actually had to take it down. And they are requesting this amount, $7,448, based off of a quote that they've received. And they would like to purchase it and get the speed sign back up in that location.
Yeah, my only question is that when you look at the quote, it's got the actual sign itself for $3,626, and it's got all this other stuff from controllers to mounting brackets to all of that. When this was damaged, did they literally come in and destroy everything, and all of this has to be replaced, or is that just the way this works?
I don't know exactly how it works, but I do know that Captain Hudema did a thorough review of if anything was salvageable from the
Okay.
existing sign.
Okay. And then what happened to it? Was it
Yeah, somebody hit
vandalized,
it?
or?
I think it just reached end of life. It was rather old. We had gotten it with grant funds.
So maybe it's a different model in the park.
Yeah, and all the,
still,
well, and all the parts of it, so, okay. I'm okay with this. Anybody have any questions?
but no, I think they're great in town. I like having them.
No, they are.
I actually hit it on my way home. No.
Now the culprit emerges. I'll pardon you, don't worry. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve a request to transfer $7,448 from Board of Finance Capital Reserve for the replacement of the dynamic speed sign, and we recommend that to the Board of Finance. Monica moves, Mike seconds, all in favor? Okay. Second transfer, discuss and take action on a request to transfer $3,400 from the Board of Finance General Fund contingency for the payment of a Hearst invoice. Jennifer.
The town clerk is the one who manages the advertising budget whenever there's ordinance changes or anything that comes out of the RTM that needs to be published. The harbor changes required legal notice in 2 publications. I think that was a state requirement before they could become effective. They had to be in 2 publications with wide circulation within Darien. And so the 2 publications, as well as the size of the materials, is making them exceed their budget. So they're requesting a transfer to replenish their budget to offset the cost of the publication of the harbor-related changes.
Just as an aside on this, we've had some conversations in Westcott. There's a lot of frustration around these newspaper notices because it's over a period of 2 weeks. I think you have to do this. It's super expensive like this. It delays implementation of all kinds of things. And by the way, no one reads these newspapers anymore because they're not published locally and they're still local news, not meant as a criticism, but the Darien Times does not cover Darien anymore. And so one of the discussions has been, what would it take to get some of this changed at a state level? Obviously, the state is under tremendous pressure from these large newspaper owners to preserve that, because that, as evidenced by the $3,400 we're about to spend, is a big revenue stream for them that supports them. And so what I proposed is, all right, we won't fight those guys, but could we please have some electronic notification of these types of things that serves as the deadline, meeting the deadline that we could use, in addition to saying, all right, we've also published this in a newspaper and pay these guys, but we're just not going to rely on that as being, as driving the calendar for getting things done. So we're going to run that by the legislature to see if they would consider that change. It doesn't change the economics for the newspaper owners. I get that. It's a revenue stream for them. But it frees us from being constrained by these deadlines that are seemingly artificial and very 19th century.
The town newsletter couldn't be considered.
That's my point. We could do social media. I would welcome their input as to what they'd stipulate that would constitute adequate notification. But we've got a ton of stuff that gets far better reach than stuff like this.
100%.
Yeah.
So,
For less expense.
for a lot less money. And I'm willing to, if I could just get the deadline problem solved, I'm willing to keep paying the $3,400 because I don't know that we would get this past the legislature if we took this money away from these newspapers, because this is just 2 ads for harbor regs. You can imagine how much money these newspapers are making from these required notices. And it's not just towns, it's, I'm sure, legal notices that your firm spends a ton of money on.
Yep.
And I get it. Because if you change that, where we didn't have to spend that money anymore, those newspapers would go out of business pretty quick. Just fine. 2 cents. Okay. So, any other questions on this? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve this transfer of $3,400 from Board of Finance General Fund contingency for the payment of our first invoice and recommend same to Board of Finance? Mike moves. Sarah seconds. All in favor? Okay. Approval of minutes for December 1st, 2025. I looked at those. My only comment is it's got some odd spaces in there, which maybe Linda can clean up. There aren't any wording changes, but just big spaces between the words. Other than that, I think these minutes look fine. Does anyone have any comments, edits, questions? Okay, motion to approve the minutes of December 1st, 2025. Marcy moves, Mike seconds. All in favor? Okay, still on agenda review is approach for bike and scooter safety. Does anyone else have anything to add for agenda review? No? Okay. Upcoming meetings, we've got Monday, January 5th. That will be in room 6. We've also got Monday, January 26th, which will be by Zoom, and then the day right after that is the 27th, and that'll be our joint department heads meeting.
I won't be here for that.
You and Mike will be there. Okay. I think that's it for our agenda, other than to say I wish everyone a sincerely great holiday season. It's a tremendous time of year, and I hope you get to spend time with friends and family and not at town hall. So anyway, I appreciate that, everybody. Have a great holiday season. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Okay. Everyone moves. No, Mike moves. Marcy seconds. All in favor. We're adjourned. Thanks a lot.